Recording this one a little bit later in the week with Eric, but we're into NFL Week 14. Wow, we are flying through the NFL season, Eric. Just a few weeks left, and there's a lot of buys this week too. I think 6 teams are on a buy, and we're recording on Friday, so we're not going to talk about the Thursday night game, but we do have a little bit more information now when we record at about 7:30 p.m. on Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Friday night. As far as like injury concerns, numbers have moved a little bit. We are looking at the betting lines over at Betfred Sportsbook, and we'll kind of reference them, and we'll talk about how numbers have moved and kind of moved at other places all over. And the object always for us as a gambler, Eric, is finding value. So it's not sometimes it's about the spot, but always it's about the number, right? Sometimes it's about the team and the matchup. Sometimes it's about the spot. But no matter what, you always have to look for and try to find the best value that you can get.
Yeah, so it's all about, finding value. There's one interesting matchup I'm sure we'll get to later that I know we'll get to later where, I got it really, really early and now the numbers change and it's kind of getting to that point where,
you may have to go the other way.
Yeah, maybe I'll look to go in the other way. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. I did want to ask you a question though. I'm not sure if you saw Matthew Berry's video. He put out this video. He said he has no idea. This is just him spitballing things. Does Stafford just hang it up after this year?
I mean, that's not a bad sort of like take, right? Because if you're Stafford and you just sort of look at the lay of the land with the Rams, they had the great year last year. Everything came together. You left Detroit to go try to win, and you did. But, man, this is a guy who's had a lot of injuries through the years, right? He was banged up with your Lions a lot, and now we're talking about neck and, like, concussion issues, right?
Yep.
Like neck, back, concussion stuff. That's really scary. He's already got the Super Bowl win. Does he look and think, man, this offensive line isn't that great? Are we going to be a great offensive line next year? We don't really have a whole lot of weapons in the backfield. We're getting older. This was a bad year. I know it's not the way you want to go out, right? Because you could have gone out last year after winning the Super Bowl. But now you kind of have the perspective of the year after, and maybe you do. Maybe you do. And then I really get my my Baker jersey, my Baker Mayfield, who is cooking.
I'll give him props. He looked better.
Yeah. Well, you know what? When we're talking on Friday, so the Rams beat the Raiders on Thursday night. One great spot to come in for Baker because there's absolutely like no pressure on you because nobody's expecting anything of you. You just got there. So in the first half, they didn't really ask much of him. And then in the second half, now you've gotten warmed up a little bit and you're playing against one of the worst defenses in the league. But I will say, like you're giving him credit. I'm going to give him some credit too. It's not like he has a bunch of playmakers out there with the Rams either.
I'll tell you what, I like the kid from Louisville.
Skowronek? Atwell. Well, like Atwell, Skowronek, and Jefferson are who are out there, right? So we're not talking even about like Cooper Kupp or, he's just kind of making, throwing it to one or two guys who are breaking it. Like he had 2 nice drives too. So credit to him. But now sometimes we see this, especially with a guy like Baker, because Baker is such like an emotional kind of like head case guy, positive and negative. He gets up for stuff like that. Now, next week, everybody knows for sure you're playing, you're starting. People got film on you now. They know your tendencies now. Now that you have a week and there's now a little bit more pressure on you to actually go out there and execute, can he do it and look good? Because you know what? This is a really good opportunity for him. He's in a great spot. He could have gotten released from Carolina and nobody could have picked him up. If he would have gone through waivers and nobody picked him up, it wouldn't even have been that surprising with as bad as he played. But now he came back, and the first thing we saw was him go out on Thursday night when everybody was watching, have a couple big drives, a game-winning drive, and now there's a lot better mojo for him than there was just a week or two ago, right?
Yeah, people are feeling him a little bit. people are saying, well, it didn't matter because San Francisco was so far down. San Francisco should at least put a claim in for him. I mean, honestly, wouldn't have mattered, but
it's kind of a good rivalry thing to do. If you're the Rams, you just kind of block the 49ers from getting a chance to get him too, and so cool for the Rams, take a little swing there. And like you said, maybe something happens where Stafford says, hey, I'm done. I got my ring. Let's just end it right now. I'm out. Maybe you have Baker to take a look at right there, and you can get him for pretty cheap. So interesting spot, and we'll see if he can continue to progress towards the end of the year and look a little bit better, because he did not look good at all this year. And what's disappointing is, like, we can say, well, yeah, it's Carolina, so it's not like very many people are going to win a bunch of games in there. But of all the quarterbacks that played in Carolina this year, he looked the worst in Carolina. Sam Darnold looked better than him, and so did PJ in a couple games. Looked better than Baker. So that's where it was hard to give him credit this year, because, people could have said, okay, Carolina's not a great spot, but there were two other guys that weren't in a good spot either, and they at least looked a little bit better than him. So,
I mean, it's an interesting thought. I didn't even contemplate it until I heard it, until I saw it.
No, but you're right. Because what if, I mean, they're all athletes, right? So a lot of these guys want to come back, and he's motivated. He's obviously a guy who may not want to go out that way, but maybe he looks around and he thinks about how he's aging a little bit. He's getting a little bit older. Yeah. Good.
Also, real quick for the people, if you have not read oh my God, I'm spacing who wrote it, but if you just Google Andrew Luck article, I mean, interesting read, real interesting read.
Yep. And that's something when some of these other players read something like that, right? It seeps into them. Yeah. When you hear a guy like Andrew Luck that's on that level that decides, what, it's okay to hang it up because there are other things in life I want to be able to experience, then, and again, it's not like a knee injury or like an ankle injury is different, but the neck, head, concussion stuff, that's scary, man. Like, you want to be able to bend down and play with your kids and your family and stuff.
Yeah, and he's got all young kids. It was just an interesting take. I found it
and
really
it's a good. Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's dive on in, Eric, to this weekend. Let's start with the Ravens and the Steelers. So Baltimore's 8-4, 4-7-1 straight up, or 4-7-1 against the spread. Steelers are 5-7, 6-5-1 against the spread. This number has moved around a little bit, right? Earlier in the week, we got this thing got up to about Pittsburgh -3. Now I think it was down to 1.5. We know Lamar's out. It's going to be Huntley playing for the Ravens. Some things on the Ravens side. Last year, they went 1-4 without him, including 4 straight losses to end the year. But last week, Huntley did lead a game-winning touchdown drive. They had to go 64 yards on 16 plays. He completed 2 fourth-down conversions and cost Eric a good amount of money by doing so in one incredible bet.
You know what?
But
it is what it is. It was a fun 3-hour
ride. You had a ride, man. You had a ride.
It was a fun 3-hour ride. Did we end up losing money? But it was $25, 100-1, no tutty, and it almost hit. But on to the next one.
So this year they've blown 3 big leads in games, and that last week they actually did not hold a lead in the game until 23 seconds remaining. So it's funny. That's when people say things even out a little bit, right? Because that was a game they didn't seem like at any point they were going to win.
No.
And then they drive all the way down late in the game, complete a couple fourth down conversions, and they went 35 minutes of game time between the 3 points they scored and then the touchdown that they scored. 35 minutes of game time between scores. The defense, though, continues to hold strong. There were back-to-back interceptions, and because the Broncos offense is so bad, and the defense held strong, they only gave up 3 points when your team turned it over back-to-back and gave the other team great field position. Now, they were outgained in yards per play. They had a negative turnover margin, but it just sort of was, again, like things evening out a little bit for them after a lot of games this year that they lost, that things kind of went the other way. The Steelers have actually beat the Ravens overall 4 straight times by a combined 13 points. And this number last week on a look ahead, I think I saw Eric was like, with Lamar healthy, would have been like Ravens -5.
Yep.
Something in that range. And so now we're obviously, that's telling you Lamar Jackson is worth somewhere based on what people played this at in the range of like 6 to 8 points.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And this, I'm looking at it. If I could have got this at Ravens +3, that was it.
Me
Tomlin 1-7 ATS is a home favorite versus Harbaugh in their coaching career.
Because is Lamar, because at that point, that would have been saying Lamar is worth like 8 points in a game where the over-under is only, 36 and a half. Like, that's a lot of points in a low-scoring game like this.
I really, I feel with the number, I don't trust Pickett. I think the Steelers defense is legit. End of the day, I don't trust Pickett. An interesting thing kind of happened with what the Steelers do. The majority of the time, Deontay Johnson lines up on the right, Pickens lines up on the left, which means that Pickens would be going up against Peters and Johnson would be going up against Humphrey. Johnson didn't practice. So does that mean Johnson doesn't go? If Johnson doesn't go, we have to expect that they're going to change thematically what the Ravens do, put Humphrey on Pickens. If they do that, I don't know how the Steelers offense is going to be moving at all. Pickens against Peters, I think, was a great matchup. I think it was a little sneaky fantasy play, even though this total is so low. Another sneaky fantasy play. And my buddy Nick and I talked about it. I have this new DFS segment on my podcast, which came out earlier Friday. We talked about how Andrews averaged 17 fantasy points per game and saw 11 targets per game when Huntley was there.
That's a good point.
And he averaged 90 yards per game. His receiving prop in this game, it's a little too high for me. That was 60. If this was in the 50s, I'd kind of look for it. But I think Andrews is a very sneaky play. I also think Huntley is a sneaky play in DFS too, because he get his rushing upside. He averaged close to 60 yards rushing per game last year when he came in for Lamar, close to 17 points a game, excuse me. And last week we saw him put up 16 and a half a game against arguably the best defense in the NFL. So I think Huntley and Andrews have some DFS value. I think Pickens has DFS value.
Well, and it's just kind of piggybacking your point there. Pittsburgh is bottom 5 in yards per pass attempt allowed, yards per completion allowed, and in touchdown rate allowed. They're awful. They have an awful pass defense. Yeah. They're not that great. Now, Watt's been back and he helps pick up their defense a little bit, but in the last 3 weeks, they're 19th in EPA per rush. So you've actually been able to run against them. They have an injury to their right tackle, but they've been running the ball pretty well. They were 5th in EPA per rush since week 10 with over 50% successful runs. Their last 4 games, they've been running, though, against teams that are not very good, that have an average run defense of a number 20 rank. This week, they're going to face the number 6 ranked rush defense, Baltimore. Since week 9, Baltimore is the number 1 ranked defense against the run. I want to give a shout out to the Bet the Board podcast. I listen to it most weeks, but most weeks it comes out late, and they usually have a couple pretty good tidbits that I don't get to talk about when we record here, but shout out to them because they do really good work over there. They're really sharp gamblers too. Todd Furman and Payne Insider, they lots of good tidbits and info. They usually break down a few different games, and they talked about a couple of these. So I wanted to give them a little credit for some of the stats and stuff I heard on their show. As I think Baltimore is the right side in here, but I'm like you, I didn't catch the number well enough. If I'm in a situation where I have to pick a game, every game, I'm picking the Baltimore side at anything around even, money line. If it's this or money line, I would still be Baltimore, but I'm not betting this game at this value right here.
There's absolutely 0 point. There's no reason to go rush and bet this game.
No. If you
Yeah,
like it, wait. Like we always say, wait and see if you can get some better value
live.
live. If Pittsburgh gets ahead, then you can play this maybe even more. You know. So let's keep rolling, Eric. Let's go to Browns Bengals. We've got Cleveland 5-7 straight up, 6-6 against the spread. The Bengals 8-4 straight up, 9-3 against the spread. We have the return of Deshaun Watson last week, and we have the Bengals now looking like one of the best teams in football. They are a 5.5 point favorite in this game. The over/under is 46.5. Watson, as expected in his return, lots of rust. The offense finished with just 304 total yards of offense. Here's how they scored touchdown. Here's how they scored. They had 27 points in that game. Fumble return for a touchdown. Interception return for a touchdown. Punt return for a touchdown. 21 points on 3 touchdowns, none of which were offensive. It was just the second time in the Super Bowl era that the Browns have scored 3 non-offensive touchdowns in a single game. They haven't done it since week 1 of 1989. And that is the most points, 27, that any team has ever scored without an offensive touchdown since 1999. So in the last 23 years, they kicked 2 field goals to add to those 3 non-offensive touchdowns to get to the 27. But Watson was just missing throws, short hopping stuff. Like let me say this. He may never get back to where he was. Maybe he will. Maybe it's in 3 weeks. Maybe it's next year. Maybe it's in 2 years. Maybe the guy mentally is just different because, man, your secret's kind of out. I don't know how much this guy's ever going to really get supported the way he used to. People loved this guy before. Coming out of college, he was thought like a great leader. Everybody loved him. Great locker room guy. We never heard a bad word about him. And now all of a sudden everything's flipped. And I heard someone mention this. I can't remember who mentioned it where about Tiger. And it took Tiger a while after your kind of secrets out mentally to get used to it. So not only does he have to deal with that, plus physically, right? It's not like he just missed because of injury. Now he's got all of this stuff to deal with, this other baggage of people booing him everywhere he goes, even his own fans not liking him, guys in the locker room not liking him. And he got pressured on 47% of his dropbacks. So, I mean, that was just 1 week against, one opponent. But Brissett this year, he got pressured on 30% of his dropbacks weeks 1 through 12. So that was 17% more than the Browns were giving up all year long. What did you think, coming out of that Browns game, just sort of like on the Browns side with Watson?
I still can't believe I didn't win a bet when I had a team getting a touchdown and they didn't allow any points onto the offense. I thought he just looked rusty. Which was to be expected. He hadn't played in close to 700 days. I know it's against the Texans, but you mentally wise, you're going back to the game you used to play on, the team you used to play on, everything that happened. You have that going on.
It was a big spot. I mean, that was a lot going on,
You know what? Don't get me wrong. He is a dirtbag. I'm not making excuses for him, but I wouldn't put too much into that. I'm just looking at this matchup. The lines moved a little bit. I got it earlier in the week when it was the Browns plus the 6.5. Burrow, believe it or not, he's 0-4 straight up versus the Browns, and he's 0-2 as a favorite. Browns, their corners are bigger and they're more physical than the Chiefs DBs are. So I think that's why they have a little bit harder time moving the ball. And then are you ready to get blown away as terms of fantasy football player of the week?
Let's hear
Last game versus the Bengals, Nick Chubb scored 24.9 fantasy points. Last year, he played 2 games against the Bengals. The first game, he scored 24.3 fantasy points. The last game was in week 18 where he didn't even play a whole quarter. Okay, so you can't really put that much in there. I think Chubb is an absolute stud this week, and he is the most quiet RB4 ever. No one's talking about how great of a year this guy's having. PFF grades this as the third best matchup in terms of the Browns offensive line versus the Bengals defensive line. I think the Browns are going to be able to move the ball on the run. I think Watson got the kinks out for having it be his first game. And the Bengals just played the Titans. Hard fought, emotional game, came down to the end. Played
Playoff
the
rematch from last year.
Played the Chiefs. Hard fought, emotional win, came down
Another
to the end.
playoff rematch from last year, right?
And this is like we say it all the time, buying low, selling high. Burrow went from no one talking about being an MVP to being 8-1, the third favorite.
Absolutely.
This is the highest value that they've been. I think that there's value on the Browns here. I locked them in at 6.5, 5.5, kind of a dead number. I would wait to see if it gets back up to 6. But anything over the 4.5, I would play come Sunday morning. But right now, where it is right now when we're recording, I would wait.
Let me get some Bengals tidbits in here. I agree with you. This number I wouldn't play. There's a lot of positive Bengals stuff that I'm going to spit out right now, but I'm not going to play it at the number. Like we're saying, everybody's very high on them, and I think there's reasons to be, but I don't want to play this because they've lost 3 times in the last year to the Browns, 2 of them by more than 19 points, like in those recent losses. And, like you said, it's a weird matchup for them, but they do come into this with 4 straight wins. They've won 3 straight over Kansas City. They've just allowed 5 sacks over the last 4 games. They've won 8 of their last 10. And in that stretch, Jets, Dolphins, Titans, Chiefs, all current playoff teams. They had more total plays, total yards, tied in yards per play. They had more yards passing and more yards rushing. They won time of possession, and they had more opportunities to score with 7 trips inside the red zone compared to just 4 for Kansas City. They beat up Kansas City, honestly, because they could have won that game by even more. P. Ryan had 21 carries, 106 yards, 6 receptions for 49 yards. Chase came back, 7 receptions, 97 yards. The defense continues to play well. They came up with big stops down the stretch. They made some big plays. Combination of guys on the defense, Hubbard, Hendrickson, Pratt, Osai, all big plays down the stretch. The offensive line allowed the Chiefs to generate a season-low pressure on the quarterback, just 15.6 pressure. Chiefs had averaged over 25% pressure rate from weeks 1 through 12. And now Burrow is the first quarterback to beat Mahomes in 3 straight head-to-head matchups. Him and Brady are the only quarterbacks to ever beat Mahomes 3 times, but Brady's 3-3 against him. And they enter now as the number 6 team overall in DVOA, even though Chase was gone for a month, and they didn't have a good first 2 games at all, and really bad offensive line issues in those first 2 games, but they're still ranked number 6 by DVOA metrics. They are 5th in net passing yards per play and 5th in passing yards per game, 3rd in third down conversion rate. Lots of positives. Don't like the number. Flat, dead spot. I would lean Browns even again if I have to pick one, but I'm not betting it at this number. If you could maybe if it floats back up to over 6?
Yeah, over 6 or over, yeah.
Let's get to Texans versus the Cowboys. 17-point spread in this one. Cowboys are favored by 17 over the Texans, who are 10-1 straight up, 4-7-1 against the spread. Cowboys 9-3 straight up, 8-4 against the spread. The Texans just gave the Browns 14 points based on offensive miscues. They were only able to score a touchdown in garbage time. They had 2 interceptions and a fumble that was lost on a sneak. 23rd in points allowed, 29th in yards allowed. I mean, it's hard to get excited about this team. This is a massive number, though. The Cowboys, they forced 5 turnovers against the Colts. It was their second game this year with 5 takeaways. The rest of the league combined has 2 games with 5 takeaways. They lead the league in sacks. They rank second in takeaways overall, and pass defense with 179 yards per game allowed. They come off a game where they scored 33 points in the fourth quarter. Heading into the fourth quarter, it was a 2-point game against the Colts. And it's just the 3rd time in NFL history a team has scored 33 points or more in the fourth quarter of a game. It was actually the most ever a team has been outscored in the fourth quarter of a game. They had 10 different players record at least 1 pressure last week. And since Dak returned, They lead the league with 37.2 points per game. This is since week 7. They're the only team averaging more than 30 points that during that stretch. They're second in total yards per game with over 400. They're second in rushing yards per game with 173. They're second in red zone touchdown percentage, 87. The run game generated a season high EPA per rush last week, but they do have an injury to a cornerback, Brown. And man, like, I can give you all the positive Cowboy stuff in the world. I can give you all the negative Texan stuff in the world. 17 points is still a hell of a lot of points in an NFL game.
All right, so I bet the Texans plus 17. I know they suck, but honestly, gambling is all about buying low, selling high.
This is too many, man.
Yep.
15 would be like, for me, where I would start, where it's like, okay, now I'm in.
Yep. And we need to remember that gambling is all about what the public saw last. The public just saw the Cowboys won by 35 points on Sunday Night Football against the Indianapolis.
Exactly.
Teams that won by 35 points or more the previous week are 41% ATS. Teams that won by 35% or more that are 10-point favorites or more, 38%. So what does that mean? That means they're overvalued. The number gets inflated. Gino and I will tell you, Texans are not nearly as good as the Cowboys, but we're not betting them a straight up win. We're just betting them to cover this absurd number. Texans
at
are
17, you're betting like garbage time 24, 23. Like, can they be down by 21 points and score a garbage time touchdown late to lose by 14? Where once Dallas is up right now, like, thinking about where Dallas sits right now, I mean, they look like a really good football team. Dallas looks like one of the better teams in football right now. But Dallas, do you give that much of a crap about beating up this Texans team by 30 points when you've got, a big game with the Eagles coming up on Christmas Day that is basically going to be, a game like for your season? That's a massive game for them. That's going to be huge. I just don't think that they're going to care about winning this game by.
Yeah, they're not going to care. They got stuff. You know what I mean? Them winning by they're not doing BCS style points. Flip side, Texans being undervalued. They're on a 7-game losing streak. Road Dogs 7-game losing streak, 63% ATS. Road Dogs 7-game losing streak that are getting 10 points or more, 62. This just goes back to the undervalued. I just feel the Texans are undervalued. Davis Mills is coming back. I'm not saying he's a world beater, but he is better than Kyle Allen. He has won games in this league. I really think that they're going to look to run the ball with Damian Pierce. I just think this totally, it's just too much. I locked it in at 17. 17 or higher is an absolute buy.
Yeah, that's what 15, and you can start thinking about it. And then once you see that it gets to 17 and you get that extra field goal on top of the 2 touchdowns, like, I think you got to go in. Let's get to the Jags and the Titans. We've got the Titans as a 3.5-point favorite in here, over under 41. Jacksonville is 4-8 straight up, 4-7-1 against the spread. Titans 7-5 straight up, 8-4 against the spread. Jags look like Lawrence suffered an injury at the end of the first half, but he did return in the second half, and physically he looked okay. Now, it wasn't a great game for him. It was a fantastic spot for the Lions. We were all over that spot, but he completed just 55% of his passes for 179 yards and then a touchdown, but he had 5 drops in that game and 3 incompletions on throwaways. They fumbled on the opening drive. They were just 3 of 12 on third down, just 266 total yards. And man, you called this out. We were hitting on it a lot. They're not using Etienne correctly. Even in a game where they were down big, he ran 27 routes on 36 pass plays, but he only had 3 catches for 12 yards on 3 targets. Like, why aren't you getting him the ball more when you're down? That's what you should be doing, getting him like little dump offs. Instead, they try to use him more through between the tackles. And okay, sometimes he can do it against inferior defensive opponents, but he gets it. It wears on him a little too much, and it's just not good overall. And then you have the Titans, who just come in firing their GM. Henry has been held in check the last few games. That's 4 straight games under 100 yards, just 208 total yards rushing in those last 4 games. And that's 75 attempts, 2.77 yards per carry. He does have 9 receptions for 146 yards during that stretch. That's helped you a little bit if you're like in fantasy with him. But the last 2 weeks, Philly and Cincy, they showed if you have a strong defensive front without needing to stack the box, like if you have an okay defensive front, you don't have to put a few extra there, you can be really successful against them because then you force Tannehill to have to kind of go one-on-one. They don't really have the playmakers there. Burks ends up getting hurt. And when he goes out, then they really struggle. Something to keep an eye on, the rookie tight end, Okonkwo. He's had at least 30 receiving yards in each of the last 5 games for the Titans after only having 52 yards combined in the first 8 weeks. So he's like making 1 or 2 big plays a game. Last week, he had a 41-yard catch, 10.4 yards after the catch per catch. That's the most for a tight end with 10 or more targets, 2.7 yards per route run. That's by far the most for tight ends. He's played more offensive snaps recently and in different formations. So keep an eye on him maybe as like a dart throw and DFS stuff. The passing defense, Eric, they've allowed 3 touchdown passes of 20-plus yards last week. Their offense has 3 touchdown receptions of 20-plus yards this year as a team. Like,
I look at it like this. So I bet the Jags plus the 3.5, and here's my thought.
I think you have to.
I love Rabel. He is only 48% ATS as a favorite. One of the angles I've mentioned on your show numerous times is fading teams after they play the Eagles. Since Sirianni has become the coach, installed that physical running style, they are only 38% ATS after the week after you play the Eagles. Then looking at the Jags, I talk about all the time, buying low, selling high. Jags just lost by 30 to the Lions. We sold them last week against the Lions because they're overvalued after that Ravens win.
It was a great spot. Now they're not as bad as they played last week in that game.
Yep.
And that's all that people are going to think of.
Yep. Teams after losing by 30 or more, 56% either way ATS. Teams that are a dog the following week after losing by 30 or more, that jumps all the way up to 60% ATS. So a dog, public looks at it, oh, this team sucks. I have credit. I can fade them. That's how people are going to be looking at it. The strength of this Jags defense is stopping a run. They're 13th DVOA against it. So I think they'll be able to limit Henry in the rushing game.
Yep.
And the Titans passing offense isn't the same without Burks. The new NFL with concussions, and I get it. You got to protect these guys. If you get a concussion, I think it's just going to be mandated now. You're going to miss the next game. I think
so too.
I think that that's going to hurt the Titans offensively. The Titans are struggling defending the pass. They're 22nd DVOA, so I think the Jags are going to be able to move the ball against them.
And last week, coming into the game, they were allowing 266 passing yards per game. They gave up 380 to the Eagles. Like, the Jags can move the ball through the air.
Yeah, they can move the ball. Absolutely love it. I also, my one player prop in the game is Derrick Henry over 14.5 receiving yards.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
2 out of the last 3 games, and more importantly, the Jaguars give up the second most receiving yards to opposing running backs. So I absolutely love that. So I liked that one. Those are my two bets in this game.
So you have the Titans, who are 7-5, so they have played their 12 games. The Jags, who are 4-8, they've played their 12 games. In the 12 games for the Titans, their point differential, -21. For the Jags, -14. They have a better point differential overall than the Titans do. Just something you probably wouldn't have thought of with, how the Titans are kind of discussed. But yeah, we talk about spots and ways to play guys. We like playing Vrabel when he's undervalued, when he's on the opposite side of this, when he's getting a field goal or more. Now, this screams like a close Tennessee win by 2, right? Like a random win by less than a field goal where it's like back and forth. Tennessee maybe ekes out a win in this game, but the Jags cover. Like, that's how I feel.
This could be a last second. I think as long as you get over that 3, you're good.
I agree.
The last second field goal. So yeah.
Yep.
Anything over 3 is a buy.
This is going to be one of our plays. So it looks like Texans and Jags so far are two that you and I are going to take, plus the 17 and then plus the 3.5. Let's get to Vikings and your Lions playing some good ball, and they're a favorite over the Vikings here. Lions are a 2-point favorite. Over under in this game 51. Yes, the 5-7 Lions, 8-4 against the spread, are favored against the 10-2 Vikings, who are 6-5-1 against the spread. But every week, I just have the most stuff to talk about with the Vikings, because they're just such a fascinating team, this particular team. They came up with a couple big stops late in that game last week. They actually had 2 different goal line stands in a game that they ended up winning by 5 points against the Jets. The last 2 times the offense got the ball late in the game, they had the chance to ice the clock. They went 6 plays for a total of 5 yards. 3 and out, 3 and out, gained total of 5 yards on 6 total plays. 3 of their drives were awesome. On 3 combined drives throughout the night, they had 235 yards. Their other 9 drives prior to the end of the game, they totaled 53 yards. Cousins started the game 1 of 8 passing for 4 yards. He did end up end the half on a really nice stretch, going 13 out of his last 16, and he led 3 second quarter scoring drives. But this offensive line is struggling without Darisaw. And, overall, they played a pretty clean game. And that's the only reason why they won. They didn't really have a lot of penalties in the game. They got majorly outgained in total yards by almost 200 yards. They had no turnovers and 2 offensive penalties. That's the only way you can win a game against a team that outgains you by that much. No penalties, no turnovers, and 2 stops on the goal line, and just hope and pray for the best. They are now 9-0 in 1-score games, which is tied for the most win in 1-score games in their first 12 games of a season since 1940. No team since 1940 has gone 9-0 in 1-score games through a full season. Only the 2009 Colts went 8-0 in a full season in 1-score games. The Vikings have already gone 9-0. And third down, they were 7 of 11 on third down. They got up to a 20-3 lead, and then they sort of coasted. But if you did not look at this team's record, here is a list of a lot of their major metrics, Eric. They're 19th in yards per game. They're 31st in yards allowed per game. They're 21st in net yards per play. They're 30th in net yards allowed per play. They're 13th in third down conversion rate and in third down conversions allowed, and they're 9th in red zone touchdown rate. They're 20th in red zone touchdown rate allowed. They aren't top 10 in anything, and they're bad in most metrics. They don't look like a 10-win team. They have great starting field position. They're 3rd in the league. Penalty yardage differential, they're 2nd in the league, and they're 3rd in the league with 8+ takeaways. That's why they're winning games. It's been pretty crazy to see. Normally, it doesn't last this long because only 6 teams in NFL history have negative net yardage with 10 wins in 12 games. They have negative 754 yards, which is the most negative of any 10-win team ever in their first 12 games. Lowest point differential ever of any 10-win team in history at just plus 10 points. But you know what's funny? They have a really easy schedule ahead, number 30th, based on DVA average of opponent. No games left against the top 12 teams in the league. This team's going to be in the playoffs, and we're going to be playing against them when they are.
Oh, 100%. This is my thing. I took this off of openers on the Lions money line when it was the pick. Where it is right now, if it is under the 3, I think there's still value on Detroit. I wouldn't, but once it gets higher than 3, my eyes, there's value in Minnesota. You kind of look at it, they are 20th in team DVOA, have a 10-2 record, plus 10 point differential, and are 10, I think they're 11-1 now in 1-score games. I saw this graph where it's if 1-score games were reversed, they'd be 1-10 with what stuff is going for them. Flip side, you look at the Lions. Lions are all the way up to 13th in team DVOA, 5-7
Overall,
record.
yeah.
Yep. Since the bye, the Lions are 11th in total DVOA. But more importantly, since the bye, after the bye or whatever, their defense, if you just look at DVOA,
Weeks
is up to 9. They
week
have a
nine
top
since
10. Yeah.
since week 9, they're 15th in EPA per play allowed. In weeks 1 through 8, they were dead last. Like in almost any metric you look at, they're an above average defense. Like since week 9.
Mm-hmm. And then the main thing that's happening is what is Aiden Hutchinson. They're moving him around a lot more. He's dropping in coverage. He's lining up on the right, lining up on the right, left. They're doing more of them. And also the first part of their season, just watching them, their top 3 defenders were all rookies and had absolutely no clue what they were doing. Now you're getting to the second half of the season where Hutchinson, Joseph in the back 4, Rodrigo, the middle linebacker, they're all starting to figure out and playing it a lot better. Vikings are 25th DVOA defending the pass. I think the Lions will have success in the air throwing against this putrid defense. St. Brown, another guy you definitely have to look into playing. He has a great matchup. 29%
11 catches, 114
29.
yards, 2 touchdowns last week for him. Just another monster day. Like,
yeah, 29% target share. Definitely the guy Goff is looking for too. And we kind of mentioned it last week, on your podcast. Bringing Williamson in, what it does is it adds that deep threat, basically a 3-point shooter where you have to respect that and you have to like the deep ball. That opens up so much stuff over the middle for Brown. Goff, 65% ATS playing at home for the Lions. I like the Lions here. I think they win the game, but again, asking a team like this to win more than 3 is a lot. So if this gets over 3, if this gets to Minnesota plus 3.5, I'm going to buy back in on Minnesota. But right now, under 3, I like it. I got Detroit on the money line.
Vikings and the Lions played earlier this year in that game where the Lions had a double-digit lead twice in the game that the Vikings came back from, and the Lions should not have lost that game. Since week 8, the Vikings offense is 23rd in EPA per play. And so you're looking at 2 teams here where like it seems like the Lions are getting better and healthier on offense and on defense. At the same time, the Vikings are starting to struggle more on both sides of the ball too, and they're getting that regression to the mean after early in the year. The Lions had a couple of those close losses that they probably could have and should have won. The Lions didn't punt 1 time last week. 9 possessions, they scored 8 times, and they had 1 kneel down. First time since 1993 that the Lions have scored on their first 8 drives. 437 total yards, 31 first downs. Goff, he was 340 yards, 75% completion percentage with 2 touchdowns. He's ranked number 8 in EPA per dropback this year. Number 8 overall. They've won 4 of their last 5. The only game they lost was to the Bills on Thanksgiving in a 1-score game. How about Okudah? He was targeted 7 times, allowed 2 catches for 9 yards. Over his last 3 games, he's allowed a total of 26 yards in coverage. Penei Sewell did not allow a single pressure, 43 pass blocking snaps against Josh Allen, one of the best pass edge rushers in the league. He's now had 8 games this year, Sewell, where he's allowed 1 pressure or less. Swift played more than half the snaps for the first time since week 2, led the team in carries, rushing yards, also had 4 catches for 49 yards. You mentioned the DVOA metrics, 7th overall the last 6 weeks, 9th in offense and defense, and 6th in special teams over the last 6 games. Their offense, they're 3rd in defensive pass efficiency over the last 5 games, adjusted for opponent. They're 6th in EPA per play since week 8. They were 22nd before that. We're on the Lions, and that'll be one of our other plays here as we continue along to Jets and the Bills. The Jets are 7-5 straight up, 7-5 against the spread. The Bills are 9-3 straight up, 6-5-1 against the spread. The Jets beat the Bills a little earlier on this year, and they could become one of the first team, or one of only a few teams ever to beat a team twice as an 8+ point favorite in the same, as an 8 point plus underdog in the same season. It hasn't happened since 2006. Now, when they played the Bills, it was Wilson. Now White is starting. Last week they played the Vikings. They had more first downs, more total plays, more total yards than the Vikings by 200 total yards, more yards per play, more passing yards, basically even in rushing yards. They won the time of possession by over 3 minutes. They ended up losing the game for a couple reasons. 2 turnovers and 1 for 6 in the red zone. They also had 6 penalties for 40 yards in a game where the Vikings only had 2. Now, White still looks a lot better than Wilson, but in this game, he had to throw 57 times, 26 incomplete passes. He did get hit 8 times in that game, and that was twice as many throws as he had last week. Now, he did have 369 yards, and he brought the Jets back trailing by 17, and another good game for wide receiver Wilson, 8 catches, 162 yards. Also had a touchdown that was called back after he stepped out of bounds at the 11-yard line. So could have been an even bigger game. He also drew a pass interference inside the 10-yard line. The offensive line was very good. They only gave up pressure on 8% of their dropbacks. But in the last 4 games, they've only scored touchdowns 4 out of 14 red zone trips. And Mike White has played against the Bears and the Vikings. They are last and 28th in pass efficiency for the defense. And now he's playing Buffalo. That's the number 7 ranked pass defense. I don't know what this matchup is going to be like for him. I mean, I'm not going to lay this number with 10 with the Bills, but do you like the Jets at the double-digit number? Talk to us about this game.
Damn right I do, man. I bet the Jets here plus 10. Couple things going on. Allen, 9 point. Okay, sorry. Divisional road dogs getting 10 or more points, 56% ATS. Bills got some serious injuries going on, especially to the offensive line. This Jets defense is legit. I think they're going to be able to get to Allen. I know Cook has looked better. Singletary has looked better. But for whatever reason, the Bills just don't commit to the run as much as they should. Allen's arm is not 100%. And you can tell it doesn't really hurt the deep throws. It hurts that medium stuff with his accuracy. The weather is going to be putrid. It's supposed to be cold, windy, rainy there. That's going to affect stuff for this Bills offense in terms of the passing game. And when it's like this, you got to look at the better run game. I'm going to favor the LaFleur run system that the Jets run, moving the ball with Knight, with Carter could be coming back. You got James Robinson. I'm getting a divisional dog on the road at 10 points that hit at 56%. I mean, this is what I live for, dude. I locked in the Jets. I got it locked in.
The loss earlier, 20-17. Allen got sacked 5 times. He had a passer rating under 50 in that game. It was his only game this year without a passing touchdown. The Bills do have Tre'Davious White back for this game, which they didn't earlier in the year. Bills and the Patriots have played 4 times in the last 52 weeks. There was a stretch over 4 consecutive games in 24 drives where the Bills had 13 touchdowns and just an incredible dominance against the Patriots there. But I agree with you, man. At 10, this is just too high for a Bills team that can keep this game close enough. And they've shown to be feisty enough with Mike White. So big number here in the divisional game. We're on the Jets side as we continue along to Eagles Giants. Eagles are 11-1 straight up this year, 7-5 against the spread. Giants 7-4-1 straight up, 9-3 against the spread. Eagles are a touchdown favorite in this game right now. 45 is the over-under. The Eagles, they held Derrick Henry to 30 yards on 11 carries last week with the longest run of just 6 yards. They sacked the quarterback 6 times, hit him 8 times in total, 5 different players with the sack. It was the revenge game for Brown. He wanted to have a big game. He talked about it. 8 catches, 10 targets, 119 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had more receiving yards, receptions, and receiving touchdowns than the wide receivers from the Titans combined last week. This year, he has 9 receiving touchdowns, twice as many as the entire Titans wide receiver core combined. He scored a 40-yard touchdown on a play right after a 40-yard touchdown was overturned on an instant replay. So it was a kind of a funny sequence of events. The defense has allowed one second half touchdown over the last 6 games, and Hurts has been awesome. 380 yards passing, 4 total touchdowns. The first Eagles player with at least 350 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown in the same game. It's only happened one other time. It was Michael Vick. He's done it twice, so he's actually done it more than everybody else in Eagles history combined. Last week, he had touchdowns on 3 deep passes of 20-plus air yards. It was the second time this year he's had 3 deep pass touchdowns of 20-plus yards. He's only the second player since 2016 to ever have done that multiple times in 1 year. And now the run defense, which was a weakness and still may not be a strength, it's been a lot better. They've allowed 97 rushing yards per game the last 3 games, 4.3 yards per carry since they went and made a couple acquisitions at the trade deadline. They're 5-0 straight up on the road this year, but they're 1-4 against the spread on the road. And one thing that Hurts doesn't do all that well, or one of his weaker metrics, is against the blitz. The Giants with Wink, you know what they're going to do, Eric? They're going to be blitzing. They're going to be blitzing.
That's what love. Martindale absolutely loves to blitz. He loves to bring it. Got a little stale in Baltimore. This is a real interesting matchup for me, and I took the Giants at +7. I have this line more at 3.5, and 3.5. What I do every week is when Sunday's over, I just make my lines based on the stuff I track and what I saw during the day. And then if I see value, I look to lock into it. Then I do a deeper dive into stuff. And it's kind of amazing to me that the divisional home dogs getting 7 or more, 55%. This year, divisional dogs 7 or more that are home, 7-1 ATS. I really believe that the Giants are going to be able to run on them. I know Saquon Barkley is hurt, and I think he's going to go. We may see a little bit more Matt Breida. Matt Breida has had established career as a backup running back. He was like a fantasy goldmine for 4 weeks a couple years ago. Jones, 63% ATS. Eagles have a line of injuries. Gobert has Gallus. I'm always F up this guy's name. Their tight end, since he hasn't been there, Goddard, subtract the Titans game, it hasn't looked the same.
This is just too high of a number divisional. This number should be like 5. 3.5. But like 5 would be dead, right? But like as soon as it should be over a field goal, but between like the 3.5 to 5, once you get in the 6 to 7 range, like especially now at a touchdown, it's just too high. The Giants have a little bit. I'm not saying the Eagles are going to coast, but the Giants have to play for their lives right now.
Yeah, they're battling right now for their lives. Jones 60%, 63% ATS as a dog.
They're just way better when he runs too, right? And last week, he was running the ball, 12 carries, 71 yards. That helped with the passing game. He was 25 of 31. Takes a little pressure off of Barkley. He got 63 carries on 18 yards. It wasn't great, but it was fine. Jones had 5 first downs rushing. That was key, picking up big plays. What hurt them, they were 4 of 13 on third down. If they go 6 of 13 on third down, they win the game.
Yeah. And, Hurts is he's a second favorite to win MVP. He's only 20% ATS. This is a team that both these teams play at a slower place. Both these teams like to run the ball. And you're telling, you know what I mean? It's slow pace, high number. I love the Giants here. Anything over the 7. In terms of fantasy, I really think a sneaky play, and I have this new DFS segment I do on my podcast with my boy Nick, and we build you a DFS lineup. Quintez Watkins, we talked about him. 3 straight games, he has at least 5 catches or a touchdown. So he's kind of taken over Dallas's the tight end. He's kind of taken over that role in the offense. Um, he's a real sneaky under the radar DFS play. But yeah, I like the Giants here. Anything over seven or more, I'd lock that in.
Let's keep rolling, Eric. Where do we head next?
We're
Chiefs
going
and the
to your
Broncos.
favorite team, dude. The Denver
What?
Broncos.
I
Your favorite
know.
team, the Denver
I
Broncos.
know. Good old Russ. 9-3 Chiefs, 3-8-1 against the spread. 3-9 Broncos, 4-8 against the spread. So last week, Chiefs had that fun game against the Bengals. They had the ball with 14 minutes left in the game, up by 4, and they fumbled the ball, gave the Bengals the ball back. They scored a touchdown. That ended up being the game-winning touchdown. On their final drive, they had a 55-yard field goal that could have tied the game, but it had to be longer because the Bengals defense came up with a big sack to force that longer field goal. They only had 2 plays of 20-plus yards last week, the Chiefs, and their defense generated a season-low quarterback pressure percentage, just 15. They've averaged like 25+% quarterback pressure percentage by the defensive line. They've now lost games to the Bengals and the Bills, so if tiebreakers come into play, those could be a couple big losses that hurt them for a home field advantage or, spot like that. They actually played pretty well. I mean, they had the lead and they had the chance to win the game in the game where the Bengals actually squandered a lot of opportunities. It feels like the Bengals might just be one of those weird matchups for them because they didn't really do a whole lot wrong in that game, but they, they still rank really well all over. They don't get a lot of takeaways. They're -4 in takeaways, which is kind of strange for a good team. They still rank first in yards per game, net yards per play, first in a lot of offensive metrics, second in passing yards per game, third down conversion rate. I don't know, man, but this is another one where the Broncos are terrible. Can you get enticed to play them at +9 at home here?
I actually got him at I got him at 9.5, excuse me. Again, home divisional dogs, gang over 7, 55% ATS, 7-1 this year ATS. Excuse me, man. Mahomes road favorite, 7 or more. He's only 33% ATS. The Chiefs, they have these smaller DBs. They're really weak in the slot, and how Russell Wilson plays now, that's all I can throw to the slot. Jerry Jeudy's going to be a go. He's going to look to exploit that. Go with Jeudy across the middle. With how bad the Chiefs defense has been, they're 25th in DVOA, 18th rush DVOA, 26th passing DVOA, and we saw it last night in the Raiders game. When your defense is that bad, even if a quarterback that just got there two days before doesn't know the system, they're going to be able to move the ball
to hit spots. They're going to find spots that are open. Yeah. All you have to do is just be basic.
And that's, the weakness of the Broncos defense is not the passing game. It's defending the run. And we've seen this Chiefs team, for Pacheco's had glimpses, but ever since they cut Kareem Hunt, rightfully so, don't get me wrong, they haven't really had that elite running back that they can lean on. And I think that's going to cost them this game. And you can tell that because as soon as the Chiefs get inside the 5-yard line, with all the trickery they do, it's like a circus show. Maybe that's why they signed Melvin Gordon to the practice squad. They bring him up there to be the 5-yard and in back. But, he's got all these issues with fumbling. And we saw it last year. I don't know if you remember, there was that standalone Saturday game. You and I were both on the Broncos, and it was a Drew Lock game, and they were covering forever, but then there was a late pick where they got outside the number. I'm getting a divisional dog over 7. Mahomes struggles to cover these big numbers because the Chiefs are overvalued. And with how bad the Chiefs defense are, Broncos defense is legit. I'm on the Broncos here +9.5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have a lot of bad things to say about the Broncos, but I agree with you. I couldn't be laying the number. I probably would wait a little bit. 9.5, I'm fine with. I may wait a little bit to see if it goes back the other way to 10. I don't know if it will. Broncos had just 189 yards passing and only 88 rushing yards. They had to punt 7 times in that game. They had an interception. They gained an interception. They were set up on Baltimore's 40-yard line. They had a 3-point lead. On that possession, they got 8 yards. They kicked the 50-yard field goal and left the game open. Then they got another interception, and they were able to manage 1 first down and then had to punt it. It was the sixth time they've had a game this year where they lost to an opponent that scored less than 20 points. 6 times they've lost to teams that have scored less than 20. They're averaging 13.8 points per game. They're on pace, Eric, to be the first team in the last decade to average under 14 points per game. But
that's just putrid. That's just so putrid.
Dulcich, major focus last week. And what I'd like to see, the first 3 passes they threw all went to him. So that's like a game plan thing. You know, when you're using a guy early and they have some injuries, so they may need to get him involved quite a bit. 6 targets, or 8 targets. He caught 6 passes, 85 yards. As a team, they only threw it 22 times. They do have, some injuries there. Keep an eye on him as a nice tight end. Wilson, in the first half of games this year, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. In the second half of games, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 23 sacks, and a 57% completion rate. They have scored a total of 45 points since Halloween. The Cowboys scored 54 last week on Sunday night. 2 years ago in Seattle, after 13 games, Russell Wilson was on a team that was a 9-win team. He had 36 touchdown passes. This year, 13 weeks, he's on a 3-win team with 8 touchdown passes. It was the 10th time this year where they have had 1 or 0 touchdowns that they have scored offensively in a game. But I'm with you. I'm going to wait, but I have no problem playing the Broncos side at 9 or over. I think we may be able to get to the 9.5 or 10, though. Let's get to Panthers, Seahawks, Eric. Panthers, 4-8 straight up, 6-6 against the spread. 7-5 straight up for the Seahawks, 6-6 against the spread. The Seahawks are a 3.5-point favorite in this game, over under 44.5. Darnold was number 6 in passing grade last week. He had 2 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays. He threw for a touchdown. He had 164 yards. This is now the 4th different head coach that he has had a win with in his 5 seasons. It's also the 3rd different quarterback for the Panthers that earned a win this year. And Moore looked really good. 4 receptions, 103 yards, and a touchdown. So Moore, in his career, has 12, or this year, he has 12 catches of 20-plus yards, and 3 of them came from Sam Darnold in one game. And prior to this game, Moore had been held under 30 receiving yards in the last 3 games. All 6 of his targets in this game were for 10-plus air yards. So he's a good DFS play, and he's much better in fantasy with Darnold. Whether or not you like Darnold, they just have a better connection, and he gets the ball to him in down the field routes, which are, very good, obviously. On the Seattle side, they got off to a really good start last week. They had touchdown drives of 80 and 91 yards in their first 3 possessions, but then mistakes started to creep in. Fumble, strip sack on the Rams 40, 2 drives later, an interception in Rams territory. We just don't know who this defense is. First 5 games of the year, they allowed 30.8 points per game. The next 5, 17.4 points per game. Last week, 40 points against the Raiders. And then they play against the banged-up Rams team, and they let the Rams team move the ball against them without basically like a backup Rams team. And, the game was close, and the Rams scored 10 points in the fourth quarter of that game against Seattle. On 2 different drives, they almost lost the game because their defense couldn't come up with, key stops. They did come back and win. Gino said career high in passing yards in a game with 367. He's now passed for more yards in one season than in ever before. He's already at 3,100 plus. And they're only 1 game behind the Niners, who are now going to be without their starting quarterback. They have a legitimate chance to win this division right now. Brock Purdy is starting for the 49ers. But Walker looked like he got hurt. They've been struggling running the ball too as of late. Just 104 yards rushing combined in their last 2 games heading into this week. They could be down to their 4th and 5th options at running back.
Yep. I think I think Homer's the guy you got to tackle. They did make an interesting signing. They signed Wayne Gellman to the practice squad. I like Gellman coming out of school. He went to Clemson. was serviceable when Barkley was out in New York. I think we could see him getting some run in a couple weeks. DK Metcalf could be the best player nobody talks about. He's having a good year. He's going to be matched up against J.C. Horn. That leaves C.J. Henderson, who's been really bad this year, against Tyler Lockett. So if I did have to pick in DFS, I'd definitely lead Lockett just because of my respect for Horn. I just don't know what to do with this game. I really want to take the Panthers, but it's just really hard for me to trust Sam Darnold playing on the road.
I know it's a tough place. Yeah, it's not an easy place. I
think the one guy you got to look at is this. You have to look at Chuba Hubbard. Everyone has this distorted vision that this is Foreman's backfield. Foreman leads the way. Last game, they had a bye last week. So 2 weeks ago, Chuba Hubbard, first game back from an injury. Foreman only played 7 more offensive snaps than him. So this is more of a split backfield than people realize. Last game he played, Hubbard, 17 rushes, 16 on the ground. Previous 3 games, he was getting run. He's caught 4 passes each last 4 games. With how bad Seattle is defending the running back in the passing game. And Deontay Foreman hasn't practiced all week because he has the 2 nagging injuries. One of them is a rib. I wouldn't surprise me if Hubbard actually leads them in carries and touches. So I playing Hubbard in DFS. As soon as his props come out, I'm sure they're waiting to see what Foreman's going. I'll probably look to get in some of his props, but that'd be my only thing here. I really want to take the Panthers, but I just don't trust Sam Darnold.
Let's move to the Bucks 49ers game. So we have the 49ers as a 3.5-point favorite here. Over under in this game, 37. Brock Purdy, Tom Brady. The Bucks are 6-6, 3-8-1 against the spread. 49ers 8-4 straight up, 7-5 against the spread. Tampa played that big game on Monday night, and they came back late. They win the game. Now they have to travel on a short week. The Bucks have played the 9th easiest schedule of defenses, and now they play the 49ers, which is one of the better defenses in the league. The 49ers, they've played 57 games with Jimmy G, and during that stretch, they are number 2 in EPA per play. Without him, number 31 in EPA per play in the game since he's arrived when he hasn't played. And like you always say, he gets a lot of crap, but by a lot of metrics, he's done well and he's won games. 49ers now have won 5 in a row, but they did take advantage of a Dolphins offensive line that was missing its starting tackles. The defense forced 4 turnovers, including 2 interceptions. Jimmy G gets hurt. Rookie quarterback Brock Purdy comes in. He had not taken many reps in practice. He ends up finishing 25 of 37, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He led 9 and 11 play scoring drives. They have faith in him. They let him throw the ball 37 times, but he was dead last in air yards. It was all quick release stuff. This is a guy that played at Iowa State, and he didn't improve throughout his career at Iowa State. He kind of regressed.
He was a cover machine in the month of October, though.
Oh,
Anyone
yeah.
That college football knows October was his month. He could cover a lot. I was looking at my scouting notes. Poor footwork in the pocket, no real arm strength. So it kind of goes back to your point about his dinking and dunking stuff. I look at it like this. So I was playing. I have a computer system that I pay for where I'm able to put in different scenarios. That's where I'm able to get these cover percentages, and it goes back to 2001. I looked at the quarterbacks that Shanahan has coached. Would you agree that Brian Hoyer, CJ Beathard, and Nick Mullins fit into this Brock Purdy category of quarterback? You know what I mean?
Yeah, those are that guy.
When those guys are a quarterback for Shanahan, he's 1-7 ATS. That has me a little bit worried. You have the Bucks D. I like Todd Bowles. I think Todd Bowles is a legit defensive coach. against a third string quarterback, CMC banged
And
up.
even when healthy with the full squad, this year they have played the 20 they've played the second easiest schedule of defenses this year. The 49ers offense has. Every team they've played has basically been a bad defense. They've played two above average defenses. The Broncos and the Saints. In those games, they combined to score 23 points total in those games. And now they're playing the 8th ranked defense. This is going to be a step up for them. Like, this is going to be, and they're doing it with Purdy now, who there's a little bit of film on him now. No team has ever won a Super Bowl with a quarterback who opened the season 3rd on the depth chart. According to NFL research, 4 teams have had 3 different quarterbacks start multiple games for them and reach the Super Bowl, but all 4 of those teams had their day 1 starter back for the Super Bowl itself. Now the 49ers defense, they've allowed just 7 points in the second half of their last 5 games combined. They did post turnovers on the last 3 Miami possessions, and the Dolphins had scored 30 points in 4 straight games coming in. Dolphins scored a touchdown on their first play, and then only 10 points in the next 59 minutes and 50 seconds of the game in 44 plays. But Shanahan, that record, 38-17 with Jimmy G. You mentioned the ATS stuff. He is 9-29 with every other quarterback starting for the 49ers. That wasn't Jimmy G. 9-29 straight up. Great defense, but this isn't like an all-time great defense. They're first in yards per game allowed, first in rushing yards per play allowed, and in first downs allowed per game. But like 5th in net yards allowed per play, 10th in passing yards allowed per play, 17th in third down conversion percentage, 11th in red zone touchdown rate. They're not tip top in every single thing. Like those lockdown defenses that don't let you move the ball at all. I don't know, though. Can you play this number? Because it's not a good spot for Tampa. That's my only concern.
Tampa needs to win, though. The pressure's on them to win.
So 3.5, you're okay with Tampa?
Yeah, I locked in Tampa at 3.5. And something else to worry about. You mentioned the San Francisco 49ers defense. They're really whole is what? The back 4. And when we take a look at it, where is the biggest hole there? It is defending the slot. Okay. And who runs the majority of his routes out of the slot? Chris Godwin. Godwin leads them in 99 targets. Godwin's going to be the focal point of this offense. I think he's in line for a huge game because it's going to be attacking the weakness of the defense, which is the slot. Am I worried about Tampa Bay's offensive line having Bosa and Armstead and whatnot, and that defensive line getting to it? Of course I am. But I'm going to bank on a lot of short, intermediate pass to Godwin, cross the middle, attacking the weakness of the defense. And at the end of the game, you have the last pick in the draft who has poor footwork in the pocket with no arm strength going up against a Todd Bowles defense. And I know he did it against Miami, but you and I have talked about it before. This Miami defense just isn't what it used to be. I locked him in at plus 3.5. I took the Bucks plus 3.5.
Speaking of that Miami defense, we roll right over to talk about them as Miami plays the Chargers, and Miami is a 3-point favorite on the road at the Chargers. Over under in this game, 53.5. Miami 8-4 straight up, 6-6 against the spread. Chargers 6-6 straight up, 7-5 against the spread. The Chargers, they got beat badly on the offensive line last week by a Raiders team that had ranked 31st in sack percentage entering Sunday's game. And they got pressured on 42% of their dropbacks. They got up 10-0 to start the game and ended up losing. Second half, lose a fumble, miss a field goal, had a failed 4th down on the Raiders 42 with under 3 minutes left to go. This year, they're 6-2 against teams with a losing record, 0-4 against teams with a winning record. And if injuries continue to destroy them, each and every year, is it a training thing? Is it a scheme thing? Is it just bad luck? I don't know. But again, Williams has been banged up so much. Allen missed so much of the year. They're playing last week with a backup left tackle, right tackle, and center. And Bosa, no, like they're paying these guys big money and they continue to miss games and they're not there to help when they need in big moments. They let Adams go for 177 yards receiving and just crush them. But things aren't great on the Dolphins side. Waddle's health has been a major question. Their offensive line has had some big issues, and they kind of got exposed a little bit last week against the 49ers. They hit a short pass for 75 yards on the first play from scrimmage. After that, they could barely move the ball. Tua finished 18 of 33 for 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He looked uncomfortable, missing on short passes, throws that he's hit through a lot of the year. He had a bad miss on a pass that was intended for Hill. That ended up as an interception. He had another bad miss that stopped the scoring drive when it was still a one-score game. It was his third worst passing grade of the year based on Pro Football Focus. It was his worst grade since week 7. He finished ranked quarterback number 21 on the week. During the game, there was a stretch where he went 10 of 22 for 122 yards and 2 interceptions. He had 3 turnovers in that game, and he had 3 turnovers in the prior 9 games total. They went 0 for 7 on third downs, and they only had 308 yards of total offense. They only had the ball for 19 minutes and 26 seconds in a 60-minute game. The running backs had 8 carries for 33 yards. They got sacked 3 times, and in their final 12 possessions, they had 10 possessions that had 4 plays or fewer out of 12. 10 out of 12 with 4 plays or less. Hill, he still had a great game. 9 catches, 146 yards, and a touchdown. But man, Waddle, offensive line issues with Armstead, who probably is going to play, but secondary, Jones, both injuries. Neater, someone who's not been very good. On defense, they have been pressuring the quarterback, though, a little bit more with Chubb, 42% in the 3 games with Chubb. And they are a team that you can attack the tight end. Maybe Everett. They allow the second most receptions per game to tight ends, 4th most touchdowns, and they are bottom 10 defending the running back in passing. So it could be a very big Eckler game also for them. I mean, I think Chargers' life is on the line here. They're a 3-point home dog. If this number is 3 or over, I'm on the Chargers side.
Yeah, I bet the Chargers plus the 3 here. Gave this one out on my stream earlier in the week. Who are the Dolphins to be laying this many points on the road? To a 43%.
Banged up.
Yes. On as a road favorite, 46 on the road in general. I know the Dolphins offense is designed to get the ball to his hands fast, but without Jackson and Armstead last week, he struggled. Even if Armstead plays, he's not going to be 100%. I doubt he makes it through the game. The weakness of the Chargers defense is defending the run, not the pass. The Finns have really struggled to move the ball consistently on the ground this year. Flip side, Herbert, 63% ATS as the dog. Chargers like to throw the ball. Great matchup as the Finns are 23rd defending the pass and struggle defending the running back, as you mentioned, which is shaping up to be a huge Austin Eckler day. And you just kind of look at it. Like, if you just kind of sit back and look at, I mentioned this before, I invested again on the Dolphins not to make the playoffs at plus 450. It's just, they've really beat up on the bottom half of the league defensively. You just kind of look at their schedule. Bills, winning record, good defense. Jets, winning record, good defense. Patriots, I know you're not big on them, but they do have a good defense and a defense that can get to the quarterback with Matt Juron.
No, yeah, that's absolutely true.
Which is a struggle. Chargers, I know Bosa's not there, but you still have Mac who can get to the quarterback. They do have a tough schedule remaining. We saw how much Tua struggled when he didn't have any time. He did get exposed. Chargers back against the wall. You mentioned their struggles on the offensive line. They are getting Lindsey back. Lindsey's supposed to play, which is absolutely huge for them, because you look at Herbert splits when he does and doesn't play, night and day. I love the Chargers here. I locked them in at 3. I think they straight up win the game. And let's face it, this is a must-win game for them. I really feel that if the Chargers need to if the Chargers have any glimpses of making the playoffs, this is the game they have to win.
Let's move to Monday Night Football. Patriots, Cardinals. Patriots are 6-6 straight up, 6-5-1 against the spread. Arizona 4-8 straight up, 6-6 against the spread. Patriots are a 1.5 point favorite on the road in this game. 43.5 is the total. Arizona's coming off their bye, and Arizona had a lead against the Chargers last we saw them, and they squandered that lead. Arizona had a chance in the third quarter with a 7-point lead. They got the ball back 3 times with a 7-point lead and a chance to go up by 2 scores. All 3 of those times, they went 3 and out. They only had 363 total yards in the game. I mean, it was more total yards than the Chargers, but in those 3 possessions when they had a chance to put the game out of reach, 16 total yards combined in 9 plays. In 1 year, so today's December 9th when you and I are recording this. Last year on December the 6th, they were the number 1 seed in the NFC. They were 10-2. Since then, they've had 17 games. They are 5-12 in those 17 games. Last year, they lost to the Lions, who were 1-11-1 at the time by 18 points. They dropped all the way down to the 5th seed in the playoffs. So, we're going in order. Since they were 10-2, this is what's happened. They lose to the Lions by 18. They end up going on as the 5th seed instead of the 1 seed. They get beat by the Rams in the wild card game by 23. Then in the offseason, they give huge contracts to Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury, and their GM, about $300 million that get invested in all of them. We hear about all these off-field issues, crazy stuff they're dealing with. They put a homework clause into Kyler Murray's contract. They trade 1st and 3rd round picks to Baltimore for a wide receiver, Brown, who had 1 100-yard receiving game in his first 6 weeks and has been hurt since. Their best player, Hopkins, was suspended for the first 6 games of the year for PEDs. The home opener was their 6th straight home loss by 23 points to the Chiefs. They lost by 28 to the Niners in Mexico. This was Kyler Murray's worst passing season as a pro. A passer rating that's the worst he's had by far. And the only quarterbacks this year worse in yards per attempt are Mills, Wilson, and Heineke. Oh, yeah, the offensive assistant coaches got dismissed for improper contact with women. Is that a good year?
That's an interesting year.
Pretty solid year for the Cardinals since week 6. But again, it's about value, right? Since week 6, Kyler has averaged 56 yards rushing per game, which is much better. And he has to be running the ball for them to be competitive, for them to be competent. And they're a home underdog here against the Patriots team who, I don't think they should be favored by many teams on the road like this. Most of their offense came on 1 screen pass last week against the Bills. And then in garbage time, their last possession, so the end of the first half, they're trying to score quickly. 8 plays, 29 yards. They have to use 2 timeouts, and it ends with a missed field goal. Jones can't throw to his left. He's 6 for 13 for 91 yards and 3 touchdowns when throwing to his right this year on 3rd and 4th down. He's 5 of 16 for 38 yards with no touchdowns and 1 interception when throwing to his left on 3rd and 4th down. He can't go left. He was under pressure a lot last week. 39.5% of his dropbacks. That was the 2nd highest rate in his career. I don't know if it's my favorite play of the week, but I definitely would lean Arizona as a home dog in here. Do you have a strong opinion one way or the other?
Tell me what Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Kyler Murray all have in common.
They're all running quarterbacks, and the other 3 guys all beat the Patriots this year. And the Patriots have always been a team that's kind of struggled with the runners, right?
Yeah, you're just kind of looking at it. Lamar and the Ravens, he ran for 107, put up 37 points. Justin Fields ran for 82, put up 33. Allen, 24-10. He only, ran for 20 yards. But again, I think that's more with his arm issue, why he didn't run as much. You got Kingsbury. For as much shit as Kingsbury gets, he's still 68% ATS as a dog, which is absolutely positively insane to me that he has that much ROI. Um, I think there's going to be more money coming into the Patriots just because of the negative stuff surrounding the Cards, as you mentioned. So, I mean, just kind of wait. It wouldn't surprise me if this gets to a 2.5. But I would definitely just keep on waiting. I'm going to be on the Cards in some way or shape or form. There's no rushing props yet for Kyler Murray. You mentioned how good he has been running the ball. And then we both touched on how poorly the Patriots have struggled against the mobile quarterbacks. So, yeah, I'll definitely be looking for some rushing props for Kyler Murray. And then I'll probably be on the Cards. But again, I'm just waiting to see if I can get that better number. Because at 1.5, there's
It's
no, you know what
just,
I mean?
yeah, yeah. You just wait, Either way, it's not, doesn't really matter. So,
Oh, so I'm
Eric,
looking at
buddy,
right now. I'm locking this one in. I'm sorry. I'm locking in Kyler Murray right now over 36.5 yards rushing. I just looked on BetStamp, which is a great app if you're not using it and you're a gambler. It can tell you every line. I just locked in Kyler Murray over 36.5.
Texans plus 17, Jags plus 3.5, Lions -2, Jets plus 10, Giants plus 7.
Sounds good, my man.
Those are our plays for this week. Make sure to give Eric a follow over at ETOF21 on Twitter, ETOF21 Sports on other social media like Instagram. Eric, you just dropped your pod a little earlier, right? Because we're recording on Friday. Talk to us about what you have. And then you and I Sunday morning on the BTV show 4th and Inches at 11 a.m. Eastern time for all the Sunday previews.
Yep. Podcast just came out. We my boy Brandon, who's absolutely killing it in NHL. Him and I talked some NHL betting. Don't mean to brag, but since the segment started, nice little perfect 2-0 in NHL betting. My boy Anders Lee shot prop went over. My boy Nick, who is very good at DFS, him and I actually go through and we build you a DFS lineup. If you listen to the segment last week, that lineup put up, I believe, 128 points, 128 point something. And in DFS 50-50 contest, that is good enough for you to cash. My boy David and I go through, we give our 4 best bets of the weekend. And since it's a UFC card, my boy Jason came on. Jason and I went through and we gave out our bets for this weekend in the UFC card.
Man, we're already into week 15 next week. It's crazy as we're flying through this NFL season. Eric will be back with us through all the weeks and into the playoffs, and then we'll shift on over to NBA. Thanks again for adjusting this week, buddy. I really appreciate it. You have a great weekend. I'll talk to you on Sunday.
Sounds good. Talk soon, my man.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us, folks, but don't go anywhere. We still have a lot